Hello, everyone, dear folks. We are live on the 80th conversation of Tiny Living Conversations. I am with Sacred Blue Heron Woman that joins us from Indianola, Oklahoma. I'm Julian Catari from Jalapa, Veracruz, Mexico. And in this session, we're gonna hear a beautiful story, a beautiful explanation, a beautiful and not just beautiful, a transforming, informative, and enriching tale of and description of how the great principle evolves, how there's a great principle in this world that governs among other things, and in that governance, we're gonna hear today what that governance does, how it applies. So it's a beautiful tale, um, beautifully written, beautifully spoken by Sacred Blue Heron Woman that I really invite you to pay close attention to, because it's not just poetical, it's not just beautiful, it's not just something really enjoyable to listen, but it's also a very accurate description of the reality that we live in, of the world we live in, of the great principle that we are governed by. So welcome, folks, and here's Sacred Blue Heron Woman with you.
Yeah, another day passed.
Yeah.
With a tornado watch this morning, since we dropped from 84 degrees to 43 overnight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was hot summer yesterday and winter this morning when we woke up.
Yeah, and everybody's been worrying about the tornadoes. It's tornado season, and you're right in the middle of Tornado Alley. So I think it's a necessary thing to ask once in a while. Hey, are you okay?
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to continue on with governance. I believe we stopped with the principle of rhythm last night, or last week. So
we had that first session of governance. We kind of covered part of the governance, but you really didn't go into because you're going to go into the principles or the
more of them. I covered 1, 2, and 3 last week. We covered all is mind. Mm-hmm. Number 1, all is mind. Number 2, cause and effect, and vibration.
Yeah.
So now we're going to go on to rhythm, and we really could put rhythm in with vibration, because rhythm can't be without vibration. They're just hand in hand. But we also can't talk about rhythm without talking about time, because rhythm is what time does. It's seen best in the pattern of our seasons. Rhythm is also what we do with our time.
Okay.
The order of movement is how Plato defined rhythm. He said time is the moving image of eternity. So, like I said, we could quibble about putting rhythm and vibration into 2 different principles, since one of the first pieces of rhythm is repetition, just like vibration is repetition. Mm-hmm. But with rhythm, once we've observed enough repetition, there becomes a pattern. So we're embedded in a universe of time, of patterns. We live on a planet that completes its cycle around grandfather sun every 365 days as we've concepted it, humans, with a moon that cycles around us every 28 to 29 days. And we rotate on our own axis every 24 hours, as defined by our human concepted watches. Mm-hmm. So most of us have no sense or appreciation for how deeply we're dancing to these rhythms, and how our own internal rhythms that we have no clue we have reflect the larger rhythms of the planet, the solar system, and our Milky Way galaxy. Science calls this principle of rhythm the law of entrainment, because a Dutch scientist noticed that if 2 clocks were placed next to each other within a very short period of time, they would lock up and tick in perfect synchrony. That is entrainment. Why? Because the structure with the minimum potential energy, that's where nature likes to come into dynamic balance
Okay.
is the least energy needed to keep it moving. So that's
That's
entrainment.
which that I mean, if I may interrupt a little bit, in this dynamic balance and least effort, the law of the lesser or of the least effort. Have you ever thought that this thing we were talking about, where people don't want to give up the comfort of their lives to evolve into the humanity we need to become, might be because of this law where it requires a lesser effort to stay where we are, and
Yes.
that's kind of like the principle that governs us.
Yeah.
It's easier,
It's
apparently, but then I would argue strongly against that, where if someone was to kind of like say that that's because, or somebody was to assure that it's a lesser effort to stay where you are than to get out, and I would just say it seems like it's kind of like I mean, and we're used to we're trained to do very little mental effort.
Right.
In the schools we go to, and we think we're also trained, but then at least here in Latin America, you'd be amazed how bad schools are, how just little, how non-demanding they are for the mind.
There's we're so high on our horses about our free mind thinking, but we don't realize that 99.9% of what we think is not our own thoughts.
It's not thinking, it's right, just repeating something that's always
that's
already
been programmed into us. So it's, yes, we're very much entrained with the paradigm that's been programmed us.
And so to get out of that, it seems like it's a greater effort, right? It's kind of like but then if you look at it as an energy effort, it really is a stronger effort to stay where we are, to like continue to be cooked by the system, because that's the way I see it. People are being cooked by the system. They're being, fried, by pollution, by chemicals, by really bad information, by being exploited, by higher prices, by inflation, etc. It's by war, etc., etc., etc. And that's, to me, a greater effort than to get out of that and free yourself from that.
Yeah, and that's it. It takes one little intent to get up and cross the line. That's all it is. What we don't realize, but
good that you say that.
Yeah. And then once you leave, you will entrain to the more natural. You're absolutely right. We're freaking entrained to 1260 time, which is the 12-month calendar, the 60-minute time clock, when the natural rhythm is 1321. 13 moons in a year, 21
processes.
21 processes, 21 days in a time period.
Okay.
I know the Mayan calendar is 1320. I'm saying with the summation of the Fibonacci sequence, we probably need to twist it to 1321. But 1320 is still more in harmony far more in harmony with natural.
260 days cycle, which then it kind of coincides with the mutation cycles of the Earth axis, and also with the cycle of gestation of new human beings, 8 months and a half.
Right, but that's only if you count from the time of the orgasm that created them. It expands the cycle of human gestation. We don't take that into account most of the time.
The like when you conceive, right?
That's the fertilization of the egg doesn't happen till stays after.
Okay.
But
that can vary. But don't you think it can be like quite soon, or otherwise could be later?
No, it's absolutely a week to 10 days after. That's why I'm saying we don't count from the moment the sex act. And that's what we don't realize. The orgasm that happened that creates babies is when the most crucial. Anyway,
That's when I, that's when I counted my first daughter, and then
you
it was
from the
exactly
time from that time.
250 days.
Most of us,
And,
that's unusual because most of us don't, right? That's where I had to go back to figure out why Snake kept showing up in my world while she's the mother of my birth waters. That was the day sign when quite
yeah,
potentially the orgasm happened that created me. So that brought the sperm and the ovum together, the two eggs. Um, so what is nature is efficient and it takes less energy to pulse together than in opposition. So we're all entrained with these larger patterns, pulsing and sync. And there's patterns like we've discussed. Venus has an 8-year pattern of drawing a 5-petal uh, flower, lotus flower, basically around us. Saturn and Jupiter together are a 20-year rhythm. Jupiter and Neptune are 13. Jupiter and Uranus are 13, right? It's so there's all these different rhythms, patterns that we're all entrained to, very much entrained to, pulsing in sync with them because nature is efficient and we're part of nature. But we don't realize we're entrained with them because we live in a pretty much artificial world. Going hiking once a week doesn't entrain you with doesn't make you realize you have to kind of live in nature and slow down to be with understanding the entrainment. So everything is rhythm and time. That's why this is a principle of governance. The wind rustling through the trees, there's a rhythm there. Give yourself enough time and you'll hear it. Quiet yourself enough and focus inside, and eventually you start to feel your own biorhythms, the silent orchestra of your body. And in its most general sense, rhythm comes from the Greek word rhythmos, derived from rhyme, which means to flow. So rhythm is an ordered alternation of contrasting elements, and tempo is the pace of the pulsing together. And we could go far further into that. That takes us into music, and we're not going to venture that far off the beaten path tonight. We're just going to move on to the governance principle of magnetism or attraction.
okay.
So the great standard, the great principle, God, governs the whole universe and is the basis of eternal harmony. Scalar life force energy, as we talked about last week, scalar energy, life force energy, chi, kausai, mana, whatever you want to call it, has a basic quality, which is attraction. And this quality makes possible the existence of the whole universe, as everything the universe does is kept in rhythm, perfect relation through the principle of attraction. Attraction and love are actually synonymous. Because of this principle of attraction, all the minute particles in everything are holding together and make up the whole. So the reason you and I have bodies that we can touch and has form is because of this governance principle of attraction. This principle of attraction keeps all our cells together. The same is true of the stones around us, the trees, everything else. So why also are we not thrown into space with the rotation of our Earth on her axis? You might answer, well, because of gravity. No, because of attraction, because of magnetism. Why does Mother Earth orbit around grandfather Sun? Because of magnetism, attraction, love. This principle of attraction is a basic principle, a fundamental quality of scalar energy, life force energy. And the space which separates the worlds from one another does not isolate them. They're kept in perpetual communication with one another through the principle of attraction, which is exercised instantaneously and eternally throughout all space and thus forms indissoluble links between worlds, which is the entrainment. It just one just weaves right into the next one. It's kind of hard to just make distinction. So there's a difference between our world and the universe. There's only one universe, but it's made up of infinite numbers of worlds. So this principle of attraction pervades the seeming voidness of interstellar space and is exercised instantaneously and eternally because time and space do not exist for attraction, magnetism, love. It's just as infinite as infinity and eternity. So the principle of attraction is the great bond of aloha, munai, aini, uniting the worlds, the bond which humanity has always consciously or unconsciously recognized because it's a universal governance principle. Why do we congregate together? Why do we league ourselves together? Because of this principle. All the worlds and all the stars are brothers and sisters, so we're all sisters and brothers. If all the worlds are placed in relation to one another and the principle of attraction is functioning perfectly, why would it not also be consciously exercised among us? Yeah, it would be, and it is constantly, but we don't understand that. We do everything we can to fuck it up. That would be fulfilling the principles of love, our eternal privilege and duty. So all is complete unity, and we ourselves are not separate bodies as we appear to be. We are part of one great universal body, united and held together by the principle of attraction, munai, love.
That's powerful. That's unheard of too.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about that. Like
No.
that.
And Aini, it's not just munai, it's Aini also.
Right.
You can't really have one without the other.
Unity. We're all in the same boat of life.
Yeah.
And so we must reciprocate and interact and love each other. Otherwise, what is there to do?
Yeah, exactly. So the next principle is that of correspondence. As we all know, probably the quote, as above, so below, as within, so without. It could also be called the governance of mirroring. What's inside is mirrored by what's outside.
Okay.
So the physicist David Bohm was convinced that the universe works like a grand cosmic living hologram. In a hologram, every portion of whatever the object is contains the object in its entirety, only a smaller scale, just like nesting dolls. Patterns are contained within patterns in a hologram, complete in and of themselves, different only in scale. That's correspondence. So first, the ancient and medieval proponents of this law recognized a series of planes of reality. The physical plane, the mental plane, the spiritual plane, distinguished by the variation in their rates of vibration. The slowest, coarsest, or densest plane is the physical, the world of matter. The fastest or finest vibration is the spiritual. And these planes interpenetrate each other. And according to this principle of correspondence, a situation on one of the levels will show up on the other two. Might take a little bit longer, but it will.
Okay.
So if I wanted to glean insights into my spiritual reality, I could examine my physical life, my health, and so forth. If I want to understand a disease state that I'm experiencing more fully, I would look for insights from the spiritual plane and then ask my dreams for guidance as to how to heal the dis-ease that's coming up, because there's obviously then a dis-ease in the spiritual plane. So our outer world is a 360-degree mirror. Everywhere we look, we're seeing ourselves reflected back. So wherever you go, there you are. That's another famous saying we could use for this law. Wherever you go, there you are. Your outer world merely expresses your thoughts, beliefs, feelings, and attitudes. Your dogs are as noisy as mine.
They're not mine. It's you'll be amazed how many dogs are there from the neighbors and the street. And then
Right.
so there's this donkey that goes by with this. So every time the donkey goes by, everybody goes crazy.
Yeah, I'm sure. So if you change your inner world, you'll dramatically change what's going on in your environment.
Yeah.
So that's the principle of correspondence. So now we come to the next principle. It's the principle of process, the principle of gradient.
Okay.
Life fully blooms in a process of flowing matter and energy. Life is a process of being an organizing whole because nature abhors a gradient. We also have heard numerous times from spiritual gurus that nature abhors a vacuum. So therefore, air rushes in to fill any void we can make with a can, with a pump. Let's say you take a beer can after you've drunk a beer or a soda, and you put a pump on it to suck all the air out, it will instantly flatten the can.
Right. Yeah.
Right? We know that gravity attracts matter toward the center of the earth, and so that bodies released from heights fall down. Well, there's a new thermodynamics that embraces both vacuum and gravity in the statement, nature abhors a gradient.
Okay.
Evolution is a science of connection, organization, because life organizes in response to a gradient, a continuum. Living entities like us are open systems organized by the energy and matter that incessantly flow through us. This is Aini. Life does not exist in a vacuum. It dwells in the very real difference between 5,800 degrees Kelvin incoming solar radiation and the 2.7 Kelvin temperatures of outer space. And it is in this gradient upon which life's complexity feeds. So life is a gradient reducing system. That's where it settles at the lowest amount of energy needed to hold together, right? The tendency to locally organize in order to get rid of the statistical anomalies incarnated by gradients is profound and organizes life at all scales. Because life resides in the pattern of dynamic flows of matter and energy that somehow make us all alive, empowering growth, development, and evolvement. And this steady state of the lowest vibrational amount of vibration, lowest amount of energy it takes to hold us together is not a static bulk phase in a rigid container. The slow, steady state of dynamic equilibrium is actually a conglomerate of processes that are temporally organized. I had to be able to say the words I write.
You did it. It worked out. We understood you perfectly. Plus, it's very coherently explained. I mean, it's not like most things you read out of science that is kind of on purpose trying to sound unintelligible. This is totally intelligible. It sounds complex, but it's really easy to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. So then we move on to the principle of Wu Wei, or non-doing. Wu Wei in Chinese means doing nothing.
Mhm.
It sounds like a pleasant invitation to relax and be lazy, to be apathetic, which it most definitely is not. This process, this principle, is key to the noblest kind of action, and it is at the heart of what it means to follow the Tao, or the way, the way of Aloha Aini Tao living.
Mhm.
According to the Tao Te Ching, the way never acts, yet nothing is left undone. This is the paradox of Wu Wei. It does not mean acting, it simply means effortless action or actionless action. That's quite the paradox.
Yeah.
Actionless action. It means being at peace while engaged in the most frenetic tasks so that you can carry these out with maximum skill and efficiency. So when we talk of being in the zone, that's another $1 million buzzword lately. Being in the zone or being in the flow.
I
This
haven't
means,
heard that.
oh, I have a nephew that's running around. He constantly goes to Costa Rica to worship so he can be in the flow.
Worship?
Yeah, with ayahuasca.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's always looking for better ways, external ways to be in the flow, to
Yeah, and
be in the zone.
I just had this experience with this girl as well, that where the same thing's happening, where they think by the more they take, or by taking, I mean, it's like, yeah, take it once in your life, or twice, but taking it is not going to solve anything. You
No,
gotta
it's just,
solve shit. That's the only thing you can actually do. It's
so when we talk of being in the zone or at zero limits, which comes from Ho'oponopono, it means we're at one with what we are doing in a state of profound concentration and divine flow. This is Wu Wei. Wu Wei is reverence for our natural world and discovering how to be as spontaneous and inevitable as the natural processes are, so that we're flowing with the current of the divine river of mind rather than against it. The first law, all is mind, right? We are to be like the bamboo that bends in the wind and returns to upright, unaffected state. Or to be like the fence post that never gets angry or impatient, exerts pressure only when pressure is exerted on it. Wu Wei involves letting go of ideals that we may try to force too violently onto things. It invites us to respond to the true demands of situations, which can be noticed only when we put our ego-driven plans aside.
okay.
So what follows is a loss of self-consciousness and a new unity between ourselves and our environment, which releases its pure energetic tone that has been adulterated, made impure and inferior by our overly aggressive, willful style of domination thinking. Wu Wei also means being like water, which seems to be submissive and weak as it takes the shape of the container that holds it, and yet it can't be surpassed in its erosive moving capability. Through gentle persistence and the compliance with the specific shape of a problem, an obstacle can be worked around and gradually eroded. The idea of achieving the greatest effects by a wise strategic passivity was central to Chinese notions of politics before the Chinese Communist Party. In manuals on wisdom by Taoists, we are repeatedly told that rather than impose a plan or a model on a situation, we should let others act frantically and then adjust ourselves as we see the direction that matters have evolved in. So in China's Tang dynasty, many poets likened Wu Wei to the best aspects of being drunk. They weren't promoting alcoholism, but the opening that comes with being a little drunk helps us accomplish many things. Because when you're drunk, your ego's kind of not in play.
Yeah, that's true.
One poet compared someone inspired by Wu Wei to a drunk man who falls uninjured from a moving cart. Such is their spiritual momentum that they are unaffected by accidents and misfortunes that might break those of a more controlled and controlling mindset.
Wow.
Wu Wei was central to artistic practice in China during the Tang period. Rather than laboriously attempting to reproduce nature faithfully, the artist should find nature within themselves and surrender to its calls. And this is the vision of crafting. This is the Viking stemsmiths that created a boat that could move like a dolphin. Right? The painter's task, the crafter's task, is not to imitate the external surface of things, but to present the qi, the scalar energy or spirit of things like mountains, trees, birds, and rivers by feeling some of this spirit in themselves and then letting it flow out through the brush onto silk or paper, through the hammer, through the chisel, through the whatever tools you're using. It followed that Taoist wisdom revered not just the finished work of art, but the act of painting itself. So there's a story about a poet that um, described a big party that had been thrown to witness a painter in action. And right in the middle of the room, the painter sat down with his legs spread out, took a deep breath, and his inspiration began to issue forth. Those present were as startled as if lightning were shooting across the heavens or a whirlwind was sweeping up into the sky, because the ink seemed to be spitting from his flying brush. He clapped his hands with a cracking sound, and suddenly strange shapes were born. When he had finished, there stood pine trees, scaly and riven, crags, steep and precipitous, clear water and turbulent clouds. He threw down his brush, got up, and looked around in every direction. It seemed the sky had cleared after storm to reveal the true essence of 10,000 things. They added that this painter, whose works were lost, that he had left mere skill behind, and thus his art was not painting, but the very Tao itself. He would often fling his ink and spread it with his hands on a silk scroll to create spontaneous forms that he then worked up into expressive images of nature. All this is Wu Wei. Sitting with the inspiration, that sitting and as you receive, we talked about this with the law of mind, with the principle of all is mind. Sometimes we try to force things that aren't actually divine inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Wu Wei isn't only the process of attaining a good life, it's a distinctive process of wisdom that we are in need of when we are in danger of damaging ourselves through an overly stern and unyielding adherence to ideas which simply cannot fit the demands of the dead earth hologram that we have lived in for so long. That is now crumbling.
Mm-hmm.
So the principle of Aini, reciprocity, because it is one of the fundamental building blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Reciprocity comes from the fact that everything is interconnected and points us to living in cooperation with all the members of our community. It's the exchange of energy between humans, nature, and the universe.
Okay.
An example of this Aini could be between a human and a tree. A tree is watered by a human, and the tree uses this water to convert carbon dioxide into oxygen and glucose. Then oxygen is used by humans to breathe and to survive. And some glucose may eventually find its way into products that we use, such as fruits. In return, we convert oxygen back to carbon dioxide for use by the tree, as well as plant seeds that the tree produced to create more trees. The simple act of watering a tree also can be reaped in rewards like creating shade, wind barriers, soil anchors, and more. So relationships that can be defined as Aini thus extend to everything beneficial involving two or more parties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In practice, Quechua and Aymara communities apply Aini through human-to-human interaction. This is thought to have originated from the harsh climate of the Andean mountain region, and so Aini was demanded for the survival of people living in the harsh climate. Members of a community help other members for private purposes when support is needed for activities such as construction and planting, and the participants are supplied with food and drink by the hosting party. The party that was helped returns the favor by assisting those who help them or others in need of aid, completing the reciprocity. And that's just a simple, that's a simple example. It's probably not so simple as I'm saying it, but we have, each of us are a community of 50 trillion cells that are always in Aini, always. We would not be held together by magnetism, by love, if the 50 trillion cells under one skin were not operating in Aini. Sacred relationship is another way to say Aini. Two simple words that can have a profound and transformational impact on life when they're applied in the proper manner. Sacred relationship is an essential ingredient in order to create and sustain a stable and more harmonious way of living in harmony with nature. The foundational piece to creating and making holy this interrelated way of being is Aini, the sacred art of reciprocity. It's the stabilizing vital force that fosters the ability to cultivate, build, strengthen, and deepen relationship to all things, personal, interpersonal, transpersonal, as well as to nature and our cosmos. It's simply a reflection of the reality that exists everywhere in our bodies and everywhere, where all is mutually connected and interrelated. As humans, we have the choice to create harmony in the flow of energy by honoring and being one with the living world, or we can block ourselves from the flow of life. Sacred relationship is all about sharing our beauty and wisdom, lifting each other up, and coming together in community as indigenous, belonging humans on this planet. Being a creative force by singing our soul songs, by fulfilling our entelechies, dancing our medicine beauty, and breathing our prayers. Being a vessel of love to ignite and inspire the hearts of others. A simple smile for others who cross our paths throughout our day, helping an elderly person, playing with a child, smelling the sweet aroma of a flower, and expressing our appreciation for it are all offerings of our beauty and love, are all a simple form of Aini. And all these practices contribute to the growth of the whole, which is sustained by mutual giving and receiving. And I think we'll stop there tonight. And we'll go on.
How about, I mean, in this Aini, how about what would you think about the negative energies, the bad things in the world, which there's a lot of, and how they also kind of come back and forth, and we're kind of, somebody says something mean to me, and I go and say something mean to somebody else, or to the same person. What would you say about that?
Well, it's simply we call it bad and we call it evil. It's simply a reflection of the energy not flowing and being used for the benefit of others. It's energy being used for the benefit of only myself. Or to disempower. That's most of the time. The mean things we say are meant to make someone feel less. That's Aini. That's absolutely Aini, just used in a very twisted way.
Right. Which is then let me say that that's kind of the big castle that we are trying to get out of, and that has to crumble. Castle of the mean Satanist dudes that created the system,
right?
Control the system, and that's what they're using everything for, to create this.
Right.
To create nothing, to destroy, to absorb, to hijack energy.
It's falling under the weight of their have-notism, their havers.
But then I wonder if there's like some other dimension or some, I wonder about the deep aspects of these entities. Is there like another dimension where they come from, where they come to this world to take energy from us, and the way they do that is by causing suffering, by using Aini in a bad way.
But no one can take your energy if you don't give it.
Right.
This is the thing. I had this conversation with a friend the other night. I said it's all about putting down the cross.
Right. I mean, you're totally right, and it's good that you say that, because
it's all about putting down the cross. You do not have to, if someone says something disempowering to you, I mean, you do not have to respond in kind. You do not, Aini does not dictate that you respond meanly. Aini actually dictates that you put the goddamn fucking cross of suffering down. I'm sorry for the language. I get very passionate about this. Just put the goddamn cross down.
Hmm.
and don't respond with
It's like
something.
here's when you don't take it personal. You don't get offended by it. You don't get and that's wonderful knowing that there's a there's this. I mean that, and it's crazy knowing that this elite guys, they know this, and if you really look at it under the scope, they always give you the choice. They might seem to be forcing you,
There is no
but
force.
at
Yeah,
the end of, yeah, they because they know that if they can only do this if you agree to it,
right.
then they trick you to agree to it. They twist everything. They
Well,
have
no,
the power of on in their hands, the media and the information, so that
right,
you agree to it.
right.
But in the law of nature, they don't have the power to force you.
No, no, they don't.
Right. Which
Yeah,
imagine if that was the case, that then we wouldn't have any any way out.
yeah. Well, nature, see, that's just nature. God, the ultimate principle, wouldn't allow that because maybe that's the 13th principle is the principle of free will.
Right. Wow. So this is all very profound, and we are always going to continue to discover more into and the way we apply this to our daily living. Because I invite you, I invite people to observe and to be part of this, and not take it just as a form of entertainment or
Yeah.
information that you're not going to apply into your life. You apply this into your life, like these principles, like the Wu Wei, and etc. And it's a long journey of learning more, of learning how to flow better. Um,
Well, it's always a being and becoming. That's, I mean, it's right. It's always a being and becoming. How am I being? How am I being? How am I becoming?
yeah. So how many more principles do we have
We're
to
going
cover?
to 13 and we stopped at 8, I think, tonight. So we'll
Okay.
have 5 more for next week.
So we need another session, and this is still just governance.
This is still under the governance branch.
Governance, friends. So we have a third session. And invite you, listener or listeners, to the next session next week, 6:45 p.m. Central Standard Time, same time.
We still have words from the old ones.
And we're gonna finish with that, but then I guess I already made the invitation, so
Yeah,
that's settled. Next week, 6:45, the next session of I'm sorry, 7:45. I'm
Central
losing
Time.
my time. I'm sorry.
Whatever. If it's
6:45
that.
Mexico time, 7:45 Central Standard Time of the U.S., which they used to be the same. Now they're not.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll see you there. So what are the
Well,
words of the ancient ones?
they want to talk about essence again
Okay.
because it's so important
Mhm.
to live essentially, to
Right.
exist essentially, right?
Mhm.
So everyone's unconscious mind, they say, knows about the essence. Essence has many capacities, some of which are called, you all humans call the subtle organs of perception. So when essence is present in the conscious experience of a human, there's direct perception, direct knowing. Because essence has capacities that transcend the boundaries of time and space. Many of you humans look for your true nature through love and devotion, assuming that essence is some kind of emotional state. And the emotional state you seek is thought of as a free, beautiful, full of joy and love state. This is what we old ones call an open heart in humans. As simple as it, just being and letting your heart be open. So the difference between emotional states and essence is that emotions are discharged to processes of your human nervous system, while essence is not. Essence is not a physiological process. It exists without the physical organism. And we'd like to talk to you about the difference between what you humans call a healthy, normal human and a realized human, a truly authentic, actual. From the perspective of essence, the person you call normal that seems to have a full emotional life is just as impoverished as a blocked human, because they still don't know their essence. In the experience of a human who has realized their essence, the normal person is still superficial and like a child in terms of their potential. So it's common for you humans, although it's not accurate, to say that essence is experienced as a feeling. Essence is indeed felt, but it's not thought.
Mhm.
It's felt as an experience, not felt as a feeling. Because feelings pop up and are like bubbles and dissipate. Essence will always be a feeling, always. That's there. It's an experience that's always there. Essence can be confused with the affect. Oh, the affect is how we present ourselves, how we show ourselves. Because in a sense, it can feel soft, warm, gentle, and smooth, and so on. These are some of essence's qualities, but not its basic nature. So let's talk about a seeker of essence who's had profound, expansive experience and revelations. This human comes to a state of opening their heart with the subsequent flow of feelings of love and bliss. This is all beautiful and great, yet it still isn't essence. That the kind of experience we just described to you is usually what happens when your heart chakra opens and is activated. These chakras are centers of energy located at the main plexi of your human nervous system. They're linked to your human nervous system and its processes, but they are the basic raw energies of emotional states, your chakras. When one of your chakras or all of your chakras is active or open, you can directly experience the subtle energies that go into the makeup of emotions instead of the emotions themselves. So you humans have a very high addiction to powerful addiction to dramatic experiences of visions, etc. And these are all just simply experiences of the chakra realm. Essence doesn't give you those kind of dramatic experiences.
That's a nice way to say that everybody's a masochist.
The presence of essence can open the heart chakra, and it will. So the ecstasy you might feel is not only emotional, it's also essential. However, if you get captivated by the emotional aspect, you'll miss the presence of the essence with the opportunity to go deeper and richer. Your heart is an organ that produces true wisdom, comprehensive intuition, the gnosis of God, the great principle, the divine mysteries. It is the organ of a perception which is both experience and intimate taste. Your heart center is connected with the experience of compassion. At this level, all the excitement, glitter, and drama of your heart chakra opening is gone. And beneath all that is a very clear, peaceful, silent emptiness. And if you pay attention to this emptiness, you will feel it pervaded by a very fine, subtle presence, and this is essence. And you'll feel a very subtle, exquisite sense of compassion, not empathy, but compassion for yourself and others. And you will note that there is no emotional discharge. This subtle presence or essence you could call loving kindness. However, that's far too superficial. So munai is a much closer word for this, because munai can't really be described. Munai. The opening of the heart chakra experiences an activity, whereas the sensing of essential munai is an ontological presence. Emotional love is not essential love. or munai. When essential love or munai is present, that is your true essential nature. Love is here. It is aloha, a being and becoming. Essence is being. And you humans are all here on earth to become your beingness, your essence. Now my dogs are going off because my daughter just got home.
Same thing here. The dogs are going crazy.
Yeah. So in the journey of discovering your essential self, you humans must dissolve the idols, the archetypes that masquerade as essence. If you don't know essence, you might think you are in service to another or to God, but most often you're just serving an idea or ideal that is mainly determined by unconscious selfish concerns. True service is not a matter of serving somebody else, it's a matter of serving essence. When your action serves your essence, it automatically serves the essence of everyone else around.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
Incredible. Something that must be repeated.
Yeah. It's pretty, it's deep. So, and that's it for tonight.
Okay, well, awesome. Well, folks, you have this recorded here and available at YouTube, at Rumble, at Vimeo, at Facebook, everywhere. So you can always come back and if you missed a part of it, you want to go back over some of the things we've said, I think it's really worth it to consider that, because otherwise you're not going to find a written version of this. So here's our great, very valuable legacy that we're leaving in these channels and in these places and in these videos. And we hope to see you on the next session. If you want to join us live, and if you want to comment, participate, like or share, or anything that makes us know that somebody's alive around here, that'll be great. Otherwise, thank you for your attention, and thanks to Sacred Blue Heron Woman for all her legacy. And so I'm going to end the live stream.
You do that.